Hi, this is Brad with Baker County Trash Pickup. My wife and I started a weekly residential trash pickup service when Waste Management left our rural county. The goal is over the next 5 years to grow this into something that could fully support us if I decide in 5 years that mowing is something either I physically cannot or just do not want to do any longer. During those 5 years, any money the business makes will just go right back into the business. We aren't living off of the money we make from this trash pickup business. Another one of the goals is, aside from the seed money I started the company with, which I want to say is somewhere around $5,000, all expenses need to be paid from the business. It needs to be self-sufficient, and after an initial period where all the investments paid back, it just needs to stockpile money. The less long-term goal is that at some point we are going to get a garbage truck. One of the unknowns is I'm not sure how many of these cans I'll be able to service in a day. We've purchased 200 of them. Right now, in about 3.5 hours, we're servicing 25 or so cans. If I can add cans efficiently, we won't be adding much travel time to that number, and we'll just be adding maybe 3 minutes to that 3.5 hours for each can we add. So adding the cans on isn't a huge time drain. What will take a lot of time is if I get to a point where I'll have to make multiple trips to the dump in one day. Because the dump, driving to it, weighing in, dumping everything, weighing out, and then getting back to where the route is, that's close to an hour every time. I don't think I'll have to worry about that for the next year or so, though. I am adding cans at a rate of about 1 to 2 per week. I'm doing a lot of aggressive marketing, and I'm hoping that number goes up really quickly, but so far I've only been adding 1 or 2 a week, so that's what I'm going to count on. That means it'll take me a year or two to get all 200 cans placed. The footage you're seeing in the background is me going about my route. If you watched last week's video, you'll know that is the week that we tried using a tipper arm. A lot of folks had been saying from the beginning you need to get a tipper arm, and it was something I agreed with. So I got a manual version just to test the idea out. It didn't work that great. A lot of folks gave a lot of great options for improving the tipper arm, maybe putting more gas struts on it or switching to a hydraulic one. But the issue with that I covered in the video that I don't think people considered before commenting was, even if we got the tipper arm perfect, the bigger issue of it dumping trash in the same place over and over again, and that trash needing to be manually moved, that wouldn't be solved by improving the tipper, unfortunately. So the tipper's not going to happen, and we're just going to have to manually sling it. There is a redesign on the trailer you can see. I cut out some small access panels on both sides. I'm driving with the tarp already installed. I'm not waiting till the end of the route to put it on. I'm trying something different every single week. So there's another common thread of comments that, it's a pretty slow process. It doesn't look very efficient. And I don't think I've done the same thing 2 weeks in a row yet. Every single week we've been testing something new about the trailer, how we do the trash. Because again, I don't know anything about this, so I don't know what works. So I'm going to try everything. And this week we're trying wood slats built up as far as they'll go, cutouts on either side, and the tarp unrolled to see if that's a setup that'll manage any blowout we might have of lighter trash. There was also some good feedback about the way I structured the last video and some of the tone. I like to bring up negative comments just because it's entertaining for me. But when I answer them, sometimes I'm being sarcastic back to the person who's commenting. But what that really means is that everybody who's watching has to listen to me talk to them sarcastically. So some folks said, I don't really like being yelled at. I didn't even do anything. And yeah, I completely agree. So while I still will consider negative comments, I'm just going to watch my tone. And the one I want to talk about this week, I don't even know if he's trying to be mean. He sees me dropping this service in a year, that the whole setup is doomed, even though I'm working hard and want to help people. That's why I don't think he's trying to be mean. The lift is basically useless, and if you hurt yourself, you can't pick up the trash. He does want me to succeed, but watching it seems like I'm running into so many issues and getting frustrated with it for such little profit. So there's a lot of good things in here, some things that are correct and some things that I would argue are not correct. This is a comment that is as close to constructive criticism as I could ask for. So the first thing about me dropping this service, I have spent $14,000 on 200 company branded trash cans. I have spent $15,000 on a dump trailer. Well, technically I qualified for 18-month no interest financing on a trailer, and I've only spent $830 on it, but you know what I mean. This is not something I got into to try for a year and see if it's difficult and quit. This is going to be a part of my life moving forward, and the smallest it will ever be is 200 cans, the same amount that I've bought. And one day a week will be me servicing that route. So I don't want anybody to think, and maybe it's because I haven't said it forcefully enough in the videos, but this trash business is not something I'm trying out. It is here to stay. I wouldn't have invested this much into it if it was something I had any doubts about either failing or me backing out of it down the road. As far as the whole setup being doomed, I absolutely think this setup is inefficient, but I also think that that's just where the business is at right now. I've only got 20-something clients. I've only got 20-something cans. It doesn't make sense for me to go buy a garbage truck. This business, again, one of the main goals is for the business to sustain itself. It would not be able to do that if I had a $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 a month garbage truck payment. And on top of that, insurance is probably going to be $1,000 at least for it. So lots of folks are looking at it and saying, horribly inefficient way to collect trash. And I agree, but there's nothing else to do for it. I can't buy a garbage truck with the finances of the company the way they are. And so this is going to be the year or two of building the business up where I've got to do everything by hand. But when I look at the long-term numbers of a garbage collection company, I am in love with it, man. It's 52 weeks a year. At best, I'm hoping for 36 cuts in 1 year. And even that's not guaranteed because here in Florida, you can lose weeks to drought. You can lose weeks to hurricanes. But man, trash is every single week guaranteed. And if I can have 200 cans placed on the street and average $400 a year for those collection fees, that's 80 grand off of 200 cans. If I can do that in a day, after expenses are out, that's going to be an amazing part-time gig, and that's assuming I don't grow it anymore. The lift is basically useless. Yeah, it is, but again, I had to try that out. There was no way moving forward in the business without trying some type of lift, because that's the only thing that could improve the current situation. The manual collection is, okay, is there some type of lift that can make this easier? We tried it. Even if there was a lift that worked, it caused more issues than it solved, so we had to try it. If you hurt yourself, you can't pick up the trash. A lot of comments about what happens if you hurt yourself. Now, this is something where I'm going to try my best not to sound mean or angry or sarcastic or anything, but that kind of logic, I don't really care about it. That's something that I've dealt with every week for the past 7 years during my lawn care work, right? I'm the only one who does it. I don't want employees. I don't want to grow big businesses. I just want to take care of my family, and I want enough work to keep me busy and happy. So I'm not looking at, well, what happens if I get hurt? I mean, it's certainly possible. If it happens, there's no sense worrying about it today, because the only thing that I could do that would fix it is make the work easier, which I tried with the lift, and it's not going to be easier. Or I can get an employee, someone else to do the work, and I'm not going to do that. So the only thing I can do is just try and be as safe as possible. If I do get injured, assess that injury, see what it keeps me from doing, and go from there. Another thing I would reiterate for your consideration is this route currently only takes me 3.5 hours to service everybody. And most of that is not actual working time. There's only about 30 minutes of actual work. Most of the rest of it's driving and being at the dump. So even if I did hurt myself and I could still do the work, but I had to move twice as slow, that's not a big deal. It's an extra half hour 1 day a week. So there's a lot of room for an injury that slows me down but still lets me do the work. For me, worrying about an injury is not something I'm going to spend time doing. And that's not because I'm an ostrich with my head in the sand and I'm saying, oh, I'm never going to get hurt, so I don't have to worry about it. It's just worrying about it won't improve the situation any. It won't help the odds of injury any. Again, aside from just being mindful of it and doing things as safely as I can. I want you to succeed, but watching in the series, it seems like you're running into so many issues and you're getting frustrated with it all for such little profit. Any frustrations generally they only last for that day and during my voiceover. So I was pretty frustrated about the lift. But again, if I'm doing voiceover, I'm watching all this stuff and I'm remembering it. It's not like my entire life is now consumed with frustration around the garbage company. And I'm doing it for so little profit. I'm actually doing it for zero profit right now because, again, my wife and I are not taking any money out of this. I think I'm putting together a P&L statement, and I tallied up all our expenses. I want to say we're about $34,000 that we've spent, and we've made something like $7,000. So it's still going to be quite a few months before we, break even to zero. But again, this is not something that I'm trying to do to get rich quick. If you start a business and after 5 weeks you're expecting positive cash flow, I think that's a little bit overly optimistic, especially one that requires some investment of capital for 200 trash cans or a dump trailer. And that's another one of the more common themes in the comments that I'm reading, is people just saying, there's no money in this business isn't making any money. And I agree with you that there's some ways to go, but looking at that end goal of getting all 200 cans out, if the average is $400 a year for pickup services, and I'm actually getting more than that, I'm just using 400 as a low number, that's 80 grand. I won't have any dump fees. I will have those liners to worry about until I get a truck, and the only other cost will be fuel, which is only going to go up a couple of cents for every person I add because I've kind of got the route established at this point, and the only people I'll take on are people that are right next door to other people in that route, if that makes sense, or in the same neighborhoods that I'm already driving through. So hopefully that answers some of the more common comments. No, the business isn't making any money right now, but I don't need it to. I don't expect it to. I don't want it to. This is going to be a long-term play for 5 years down the road. But I tell you what, guys, I am excited to see what 5 years from now looks like for this business. And if I'm over the next year or two trying to get those 200 cans out, then from there, maybe we go to 400 or 600. Somewhere between 400 and 600 cans is when I am absolutely going to have a garbage truck. Between 200 and 400, I think I could, I don't know, but I think I could have 2 completely miserable days where I just kill myself for like 12 hours a day, get out real early, get to the dump when they open at 7, have my very last drop off at 3 when they close, that type of deal. Constructive criticism is always appreciated, and hopefully I didn't come across as too negative in that one for everyone watching. As far as blowout goes, when I got on the highway, I only lost a couple of light items. The learning experience moving forward is if there's light stuff in the liner, I've got to tie it. So that'll be one change I make going forward. The other change is going to be strapping down every single point of the tarp that I can. Because when it gets on the highway, if there's any one of those grommet sections that's not tied down, it just goes flapping crazy in the wind, and it doesn't keep stuff from blowing out. Again, that has been an experiment every single week of seeing what 55-mile-an-hour winds will do inside of this trailer. Building up the sides completely might prevent it, but I think those cutouts that I'm using for the wood are where a lot of the wind is getting in. Maybe the answer is to build some kind of a door that can close over time. There's going to be some point where I have to build the trailer walls up a little bit higher than they are, just because I'm going to run out of room. So I'll probably just roll with it the way it is until I have enough stops where that's an issue, and then I'll try and redesign the whole sides. I've been going to this new landfill for several weeks now, and I really like it. It is a few minutes further each direction than where I was before, but it is a quicker drive once you're inside to get to where the landfill is. It's also much less busy than the other landfill I went to, so you get in and out quicker. The only negative is that you're dumping with the big boys. You don't really have a separate section for trucks and trailers. Trail Ridge had a really nice area with fresh limestone rocks. This area, when it gets wet, it's a little bit muddy, and I definitely see myself at some point in the future getting stuck. But I've got, some recovery rope, and there's guys and dozers that'll get me out fine. So I'm not super worried about when it happens. I just don't want it to happen. Another learning point over the past month and week of doing this work is that if you're going to do it and you're not already assertive when it comes to the way that you drive, I'm not saying reckless, I'm being assertive. You need to get that way. So if you're someone who traditionally, maybe you could go, but you don't want the person to have the possibility of being perceived as being cut off, and maybe you've got plenty of room, but you'll just wait till the next one, you can still do it, but you're just going to waste a lot of time, especially depending on the road. You can waste 2, 3, 5 minutes just waiting for your turn to go. If you aren't a little bit assertive and say, well, it's going to be safe, maybe it'll be close, but it's going to be safe and I'm just going to go. This landfill was another good example of it. When I pulled up, there were two of these guys in front of me. I waited for about 2 minutes before I said, I don't know why they're going, but let me go check. So I went up to one and asked, I'm not trying to skip anybody, but can I go? And he was like, yeah, that's fine. I went up to the other truck that was waiting to back in. And when I walked up to him, I think he was taking a leak. So I just turned back around and left. I don't think he ever saw me, but that was embarrassing. Hightailed it back to the truck, and I went for it. So there was room for me, and I don't know if I was supposed to go. I don't know if I wasn't supposed to go. But again, this is something that if I would have waited behind those two guys, it probably would have been 20 minutes before I could have gone. So this job has made me a little bit more, well, I think I'll go and we'll figure out if I wasn't supposed to after. Whereas before, maybe I was like, I don't know if I'm supposed to, so I'm not going to. I don't know if that makes sense or not. Leaving this place, man, I'm so stupid. When you drive onto these scales, they are narrow because the scales themselves are narrow. The ramps to get to them are narrow because the scales are narrow. And what that means, especially if you've got a truck and trailer like I do, is that if your truck gets off, that translates and magnifies on the trailer where its wheels are. I don't think I said that clearly at all. But basically, if you aren't driving as straight as an arrow, when you come on and get off of those scales, it can be really easy to get off center. And if that happens, your tires can rub, which is what happened to me here. And this was another one of those situations where everything I know about driving a trailer, which is not inconsiderable, just completely left my head. And my tires started drifting in the direction of the sidewall, which is about 6 inches of concrete. And I was like, I don't know how to turn my steering wheel to fix this. So I backed up and tried again, and it didn't fix it. And I ended up just going real slow. And sure enough, I rubbed a whole bunch off of the tire. Well, I don't know if I rubbed it off. I just mean there are scuff marks all on those tires. It's 2 weeks later. They seem fine. There's no air leaks or anything, but that was embarrassing. And then if that wasn't enough, on the way home, the information cluster lights up and says, hey, you got low tire pressure, 54 pounds. You need to put some air in. And so I watched it as we drove, because again, it's about a 20-minute drive home, and it just kept going down. Like every couple minutes, I'd lose another pound. So I was like, I picked up a nail somewhere. So this week's costs also included a trip to O'Reilly Auto for a lot of tire plug kits. Which is as good a segue as any into the numbers for this week. This week we added one customer and one can, bringing our totals up to what you see. And our revenue for the week, somewhere around $183. We used around 22 liners, and at 75 cents a piece, that's $16.50. We also used 7.4 gallons of fuel at $3.56 a gallon, $26.67 in fuel spent. And that would have been it except for the slow leak in the tire. So on the way home, I stopped and got quite a few different tire plug accessories from O'Reilly Auto and spent $39.56 on that. That means our direct costs for this week were $82.73. Keep in mind, I do not have to pay dump fees any longer at this new landfill. Thankfully, the county is paying for that. That did save me $10.80, we dumped 720 pounds this week. When we back that out of our revenue, we're right around $100. My wife and I were out today for 3.5 hours, so that's 7 man hours, which means our hourly rate for the day, $14.29. To reiterate, my wife and I are not actually getting paid. I'm just using that as a metric to help you see what's left after we pay the bills that are needed to do the work. But again, those are direct costs only. It doesn't take into account the payment needed for the trailer or our business insurance, or any of the other costs we have incurred. It just focuses on the money to do the work. Heading into week 6, I believe this setup will work pretty well for us. My next roadblock is going to be how many cans is it going to take before the trailer gets filled up? Again! And how can I increase that number? I think I'll be fine for quite a few more weeks. At some point in the route, I will need to tilt the dump trailer with all the doors closed. These birds are crazy, man. Just so the trash falls to the back of the trailer. Then I can drop it back down and the front will be empty. I may have to do that 1, 2, or 3 times depending on what trash for each day looks like. When that stops working, I will probably have to rebuild the sidewalls to make them a little bit taller. That means that the back gate is somehow going to need to be taller too. That is the next thing on the list, but we don't have to think about it right now. We'll just try and get a little bit quicker. I already have some plans for next week about how to make things a little bit faster as far as where I stop the trailer on each of these pickups and where I leave the trash can. I think I can save a few seconds that way. But as always, I really do appreciate you guys watching these videos. Please let me know your comments, concerns, questions that you have. And I hope you have a good week until we see each other again.